I'm not ashamed.
What signs could Moses show the children of Israel should they disbelieve that God had sent him? This is the question that we seek to answer today as we continue our verse-by-verse study of the book of Exodus on walking through the Bible.
Of his cross.
If you have a Bible with you, you can turn to Exodus chapter 4. We're going to be reading from verses 1 to 9. If you don't have a Bible, don't worry. Just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So, Exodus chapter 4, beginning at verse 1. Then Moses answered and said, But suppose they will not believe me or listen to my voice. Suppose they say, The Lord has not appeared to you. So the Lord said to him, What is that in your hand? And he said, A rod. And he said, Cast it on the ground. So he cast it on the ground, and it became a serpent. And Moses fled from it. Then the Lord said to Moses, Reach out your hand and take it by the tail. And he reached out his hand and caught it, and it became a rod in his hand, that they may believe that the Lord God of their fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has appeared to you. Furthermore, the Lord said to him, Now put your hand in your bosom. And he put his hand in his bosom, and when he took it out, behold, his hand was leprous, like snow. And he said, Put your hand in your bosom again. So he put his hand in his bosom again, and drew it out of his bosom, and behold, it was restored like his other flesh. Then it will be, if they do not believe you, nor heed the message of the first sign, that they may believe the message of the latter sign. And it shall be, if they do not believe even these two signs, or listen to your voice, that you shall take water from the river and pour it on the dry land. The water which you take from the river will become blood on the dry land. In chapter 4, we still have Moses standing on Mount Horeb, talking to God who appeared to him in the burning bush. In chapter 3, God had told Moses that he was being sent to Israel to free them from Egyptian bondage. Moses objected to God by saying that the children of Israel won't believe that God had sent him and would certainly ask for God's name. God told Moses to tell them that I am has sent you, meaning Jehovah, the eternal, unchanging God, had sent him. God told Moses that Israel would heed his voice, after which he was to go to Pharaoh and request that they be allowed to go 3 days' journey into the wilderness to worship God. God knew the hard-heartedness of Pharaoh, though, and so he knew that this request would be denied, after which he would smite Egypt with wonders. Only after that would Pharaoh release them permanently. In chapter 4 now, we have Moses still unconvinced. He asked God, Well, suppose I give them your name and they won't believe me, saying that the Lord hadn't appeared to him. What then? This request showed Moses' weak faith, for in chapter 3, God said that Israel would heed his voice once God's name was given to them. However, Moses had been rejected by Israel some 40 years earlier and so still needed convincing. God gave Moses 3 signs that he could use to prove that God had indeed appeared to him. These signs would not only be useful if the children of Israel didn't believe Moses, but were also used by God to strengthen Moses' faith. God asked Moses what was in his hand, to which Moses replied, a rod or a staff. God told Moses to cast the rod to the ground, after which it became a snake. If you recall from Genesis 3, serpents were not the friend of men. In fact, many are afraid of snakes, just as Moses was. That God had the power over life and could change an inanimate staff into a living snake shows what kind of God he is. This was not a magic trick. This was the real thing. God told Moses to pick the snake up by the tail, and when Moses did this, it became a rod again. This would be the first sign to show Israel to prove that God had appeared to Moses, for it would show them not only God's power, but that he exhibited this power through Moses. For the second sign, he asked Moses to put his hand in his bosom or cloak, and when Moses did this, it came out leprous, white as snow. Leprosy was a skin disease that might be contagious if someone had contact with you. That is why lepers were confined outside the city so as not to spread this disease. After turning Moses' hand leprous, God told Moses to put his hand back in his cloak, and his hand was restored like it was before. This sign showed that God had power over disease, that he could inflict disease if he wished, but also heal disease. Jesus showed this power to heal disease during his ministry. The third sign that Moses could use if the children of Israel still didn't believe was to take water from the river and pour it on the dry land. When it landed on the dry land, it would become blood. This sign showed that God had power over the elements as well. Jesus performed a similar miracle, but instead of turning water into blood, he turned it into wine. All 3 of these signs should produce faith in the people who saw them, should their hearts be such that they were open to believe in the first place. A hard-hearted man like Pharaoh wouldn't accept these signs, or even greater signs, for his heart was not wanting to believe in God, but reject him. Armed with these signs, you would think that Moses was ready to go to Egypt, but such is not the case, as we'll see in the next episode. With that, our time is up for today. Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of Exodus chapter 4 as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time.
I'm not ashamed.
Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.
Of his cross.